So today I am going to be discussing the frequency fence surrounding this planet. If you haven't listened to any of the other recordings, you might want to at least start with one of my first recordings, Things You Can't Unknow. That gives you the gist of things occurring. Or a couple of my latest recordings that will give you a better idea. If you are not aware, AI is ancient, and I'm not exactly sure from where it comes, but it is ancient, and it is being used by very parasitic entities in order to rape, along with many other horrific things. Now, the frequency fence was installed around this planet a very long time ago. There are some who are of the mind that it was done during Atlantis. This planet, I don't want to get too much into. I'm not the greatest with galactic history. There are others on the internet that seem to have more detailed information. I do know some things. There was Tiamat, there's Gaia. What I know of it is that Earth resided in a much higher dimension at one time. And then there have been one or two successive falls or reductions in frequencies. An increase in densities since Atlantis and Lemuria. And that was also due to the parasitic infection. So the parasitic infection has been present a very long time on this planet. And there are a few other things with that. I don't know how much of that I want to get into. Again, for many beings, they were there. They were present. Now, most beings currently have so much fracturing and fragmenting that they've experienced or suffered that they can no longer remember those things. There are a few on the planet that can, even though renditions might vary to some degree, there are some consistent variables, or there are some consistent factors, I should say. I do know that the parasitic infection has been here for quite some time, even in higher dimensions. And there is some, personally, I have some questions about the reasons as to why. Now, there is a picture on my homepage that shows a girl pointing at the universe. And I put that picture on my channel because it is, in my mind, I am perceiving it as the girl is accusing the universe of being guilty, complicit. That is why, that is how I perceive that picture that I put up. Now, due to many of the very horrific experiences that I've been forced to go through, and due to the absolute lack of intervention and assistance, I have come to certain conclusions, and I try not to force those on others. However, there are questions that I have raised that I think others need to really be asking, and definitely be using as much of their higher faculties as they possibly can, and be working out of their highest capacities as much as they can, and be drawing on their innate wisdom and knowledge and intuition, and doing their best to activate their DNA and be accessing very old truths that are held within their blood, in their cells, in their DNA, in their genetics, in order to start once again remembering the truth of things. I think it is extremely important now to be doing your best, to be working out of your highest capacities, your highest faculties. Definitely be doing your best to use your gifts, skills, and abilities. And of course, all of your logic, critical thinking skills, reasoning, deductive reasoning skills, extrapolation skills, and all of that, in order to come to the truth of things. So, I'm trying to remember where I was at. Just a moment. So from what I know of it, the frequency fence was installed around this planet in order, or with the reasoning of obstructing the enforcement of universal laws. This is a parasitic species who tortures, rapes, and murders in order to try and sustain their stay in manifested creation. That is hard to do in a universe where universal laws are present. So it seems to me that and I don't think it was just them. I think that they've had, and this is where personally I think the universe comes into it, that there are many things about the universe that we do not know, and many are under the assumption and or belief, and dare I say knowing that this is a free will universe. If you were to ask most people if they think that this is a free will universe, I think that most would say yes. And that is the knowing that I have been operating from in this lifetime. And I think many operate from that perception and or knowing also. However, it doesn't exactly translate into that, especially once you've reached certain stages or levels in your spiritual growth and attainment and expansion. From what I have experienced. And of course, that has led me to bigger and bigger and bigger questions. And also to conclusions that point in specific directions. So do I have proof, 100% proof of certain things? No. Just like pretty much any being that is doing much research and or has had things forced on them or been forced to go through certain experiences, obviously there's still information there to be gathered and to be coagulated and looked at as a whole picture in order to see the answers, the reasons, the why of certain things. So because of the things that have been forced on me and that I have been forced to see, that has led me to certain conclusions. So personally, I don't necessarily believe or feel that the universe itself is benevolent. And I have questioned whether the universe itself is actually parasitic. And that I have also questioned whether the parasitic infection, all of these dead parasitic entities, because parasites are dead, in order to sustain any kind of movement, they have to parasitize, rape, leech off of living, vibrating life force energy. And that is what they've been doing here for a very long time. They, in their method or mode to do that, is technology. Now, dead parasitic entities aren't smart. What they have is technology. And so they use it to do very horrific, abhorrent things to benevolent beings. And they've been doing that for a very long time. There has been no benevolent intervention. And so that leads to bigger and bigger questions that I started asking quite some time ago. And again, those are what have led me to specific conclusions. Now, I'm not saying that those are 100% correct. I am just stating the directions and conclusions, the directions that I have gone in, and some of the conclusions that I have come to. It would be up to the listener to be asking their own questions and using all of their tools that they have within them to come to the truth of things. And I think it is very, very possible for beings to do that. If you are working with all of your tools and you were still critical thinking and possess logic, and have at least developed your intuition to at least amateur level or higher. I'll just say become very adept with your intuition. And it is helpful to have access to, or have your psychic faculties active, and be using those in combination with your intuition and, of course, your logic and your reasoning and all of that, and have hopefully access to your wisdom and your knowledge, and be asking those questions yourselves, or asking those questions to yourself, and sitting with those and contemplating. And what I'm getting at is we need to be, as a civilization, because the time is so critical here, and because of what is being forced on humanity and has been being forced on humanity for all this time without true benevolent intervention. I think the civilization really needs to look at, how is it that we are still doing this? It is not all humanity's fault. It is not. Many people want to blame it all on humanity, and they just want to say that some people just don't have very high opinions of humanity as a whole. Well, I would have to say, in some sense, I agree that there are many beings who are very far behind in their growth, in their evolution, in their maturity. But you have to look at the causes. You have to look at the why that is. There's a parasitic species that's been here for a very long time that use technology to forcibly torture, rape, fracture, fragment, regress humanity, including collectively and individually, in successive lifetimes, in successive timelines. So it's not all humanity's fault. It's not. Personally, I really feel that we could have evolved without the malevolent interference and all the torture and the rape and regression and the fracturing, the fragmenting. I think humanity could have evolved long ago. Long ago. But because there's a parasitic species present within the planet that's been doing this at least since Atlantis and Lemuria, well, more so in Atlantis, onward, I think they've really done a number on humanity. And I don't think it's humanity's fault. I think humanity's done the best that the best that we can with what's occurring that they don't really even have knowledge of. So there's that. And considering that this species uses technology, now I don't know the details or the specifics. I know that this is done with the technology. I just don't know the logistics of it. But they do use technology and clones in combination with artificial realities and astral realms. They use the technology to forcibly regress. So anytime humanity has like a spurt or an increase in their spiritual growth, in their spiritual learning, have any kind of expansion, they then use the technology to forcibly regress, forcibly try and wipe any progress from humanity and regress them. be in order to keep them food, in order to keep their frequency and vibration low, so they can continue to feed. And much of this is done via the artificial frequency fence surrounding this planet, and via clone. Because that's part of how they're deceiving universal laws. They rape the true, authentic frequencies and vibrations of the beings here. And then they forcibly attach those to a clone. And then basically what they do is they try and do, number one, they're trying to swap out. And number two, they're the ones controlling the clones. So if they're raping frequencies and vibrations, energies, life force, energetic signatures, neurological signals, and then they're attaching those to a clone, and then they're controlling the clone, and then they're also forcing frequencies of vibrations through the artificial frequency fence out into the universe, in order to basically, it's them trying to, those are true, authentic frequencies and vibrations. However, they force those out into the universe, whatever the governing balancing force or forces in the universe that balance and mediate and make sure that that there's balance. That force thinks that everything is great down here because it's receiving true, authentic frequencies and vibrations that have been raped via technology and clones. So yes, those beings are experiencing those true frequencies and vibrations, but then as they force them through the fence, what's happening is when universal laws, that governing force, goes to reciprocate, send back, reflect true, authentic, universal law corrections, correction energies and frequencies in manifested form, they are using the fence to obstruct those, to block those, to prevent those from reaching in or from being manifested on the planet. And if anything, they may allow, they have to allow a certain percentage in order to propagate or prop up the lie that there's no fuckery. Oh yeah, universal laws, it's just karma, it's just your karma. No, what they're doing is they're trying to control. And very good, benevolent, hardworking, fast learning beings doing their spiritual internal work and really manifesting things and really making progress, those are the ones that they're fucking. Because when that person or when that being starts to actually receive their true manifested, manifestations, I'll say, of all the hard work that they've put in all of the spiritual work and their spiritual knowledge, and everything that they're putting out based on their learning, and they're doing it correctly. But what's happening is it's being sabotaged and it's being hijacked. So when their manifestations, they might, let's just say, they'll allow a certain percentage out. And then that being starts to, the universe responds, universal, the governing force reciprocates, the universe reciprocates to a degree, and starts to return in the same frequency and vibration, what that being sent out, like, let's say they manifest their best job, or they create the business that they want, or they start really excelling at something. Maybe they're making a lot of money, or maybe they're just really happy. Okay, well, it's not very long until that's sabotaged, until it's hijacked. And then all of a sudden, something happens with the business, or somebody dies, or they have a series of events that make them go bankrupt, or this or that or the other thing. Do you see what I'm saying? They are not, benevolent beings here are not allowed to experience their full manifested creations. They're hijacked, and they're obstructed, and they're sabotaged, because that is how they feed. Does that make sense? That is how the parasites feed. They raise you up, and then they try and take you down, because that causes despair, that causes stress, that causes anger and rage, that causes confusion, that causes hardship. Here's the thing. If you can manifest that, and you're experiencing the return of that, you're experiencing an attained, manifested form of all the hard work that you put out, it means you did it fucking right. Do you see what I'm saying? You did it right initially. So why would that change? Why would you all of a sudden you have hardship? Why would all of a sudden things start to go really wrong, to start to interfere with things going good? Right? If you manifested it to begin with, it means you did it right. So why would there be any interference, or why would it all of a sudden change? It's because there's interference, there's sabotage, there's fuckery, there's hijacking. Because they're trying to prevent beings from getting above certain frequency levels and certain vibration levels. They're trying to keep the planet overall at a certain vibration and frequency. So they don't want anybody experiencing happiness for that long. They've been controlling it. Do you see? They're using the artificial frequency fence to do that. Like I said, I don't know the full logistics of it, but I do know the basics. Now, there is something to be said for, there are certain lessons that probably, that in certain situations probably need to be learned. Things like ego. And I do not believe that ego death is, I do not think that that is, from what I know of it, that is not accurate. Because you need some amount of beneficial ego in order to be in manifested existence. Because it's a part of the overall being. I never did resonate with that whole thing about ego death. I don't think that's correct. I mean, if you want to be an automaton, that's, or what they call more like Spock, more devoid of emotion, then maybe that's the way to go. I don't know. I just don't, that does not resonate with me. It never did. Anyway, moving on. So they have been, I'm sorry, I have to roll down the window. And of course, I'm being fucking tortured. Yeah, they most definitely. There's been a lot of torture all night long because I had been planning to do this recording this morning. So they've spent all night doing their fuckery and trying to really interfere with my emotional body and my mental body, and tried to obstruct me from doing the recording, because it's one of the bigger things that's used in order for them to try and fuck humanity. So again, in short, yes, there are certain lessons that beings sometimes that they have to learn. However, I don't think those are such hard lessons that require total loss of something, especially when you, I mean, maybe there are exceptions to the rule. I suppose there could be exceptions, but what I'm saying is overall for humanity, they control incoming. They control the incoming universal law enforcement of the universal law enforcement frequencies and energies. They try to keep those at a drip because they don't want beings exceeding a certain frequency, a certain vibration. So if you really start on your spiritual path and you really start excelling and expanding in your spiritual growth, then they start to get involved, and they start hijacking and sabotaging and doing their fuckery and really causing they're meddling, they're causing problems, they're trying to screw you up, trying to fuck with your flow, trying to screw with any kind of accelerated like upward momentum in increasing your spiritual growth and your expansion. Because they're trying to control those things, the overall frequency and vibration of you personally, as well as the overall frequency and vibration of the planet. And of course, they don't want you affecting anyone else around you, because that just means that for them, the way that they're perceiving it is that that's more meddling and sabotage and fuckery that they have to do, right? So but in general, if you're really doing the best that you can, and you're using your tools in what you've learned, and your wisdom and your knowledge, and you're really excelling in your spiritual growth and expansion, and you start experiencing the manifested return of those things, and and all of a sudden you start being able to manifest what you want. Okay, well, if you did it initially, right? If you did it initially, it means you know how. It means there shouldn't be any backpedaling. It shouldn't mean that there's any 1 step forward, 5 steps back. That's not how that works. It's not. It's intentional. It's intentional fuckery is what that is. It's an intentional sabotage by a parasitic species that's trying to interfere in your business. And that shouldn't be going on. Like I said, humanity could have evolved long ago. If we didn't have so much sabotage, so much fuckery, so much meddling, so much interference, so much harm, your your spiritual growth momentum would just continue to go upwards and increase in speed. I mean, yeah, you'll still have certain lessons that maybe you as a being, personally, need to work on or learn. But you wouldn't have the degree of backpedaling or falling down and having to get back up. That you wouldn't have that level of falling down if there were not intentional forced interference from a parasitic species here, trying to be all up in your shit, trying to be up all in your business, fucking things up. Because they're trying to keep you as a food source. Okay, that's what I'm saying. I'm not saying you wouldn't have lessons there, or that there aren't things. It would be like a perfect happy-go-lucky ride without any kind of challenges or learning possibilities. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying all the falling down, though, that most people experience in trying to acquire and attain and manifest what it is that they want. There's way too much interference and sabotage and fuckery and hacking and hijacking and all of that originating from the parasitic species. So they're also, because they rape, they're using clones to rape frequencies, vibrations, life force energy, intellectual property, emotions, they're trying to rape a lot of different pieces of beings. And I'll just say, if those things were not being raped from you, you would be operating already naturally, organically, at a higher capacity, at a higher level, pretty much all the time. And you would have more access, more easy, more readily available access to your own stuff if it weren't being raped from you. If you didn't have to pull so hard in order to access what's already yours. Right? Because some parasitic entity's been raping you while you sleep. In raping you via knocking you down. And then feeding off you that way. Off of your disappointment, your despair, or any of those, I don't even want to give word to them. Any of those emotions that happen, when you end up going through, challenges that are maybe, let's say, not organic in their occurrence. So, I think we would all be doing exceptionally better and be operating from a higher level, out of a higher capacity, and be accessing more of our beings. And we would be also embodying more of our beings had there not, if there weren't parasites parasitizing and raping everyone. We would just be much further along. We'd be working out of a higher capacity. and be operating at a more functional, level, using more of our mental body, more of our emotional body, more of our life. We would all have more of our life force. Can you imagine if these fucking parasites weren't raping all of our raping life force? How much more life force you would have access to right now? How much more, what higher capacity your brain would be operating at if they weren't raping? So I think those are some things to think about. And I think what they're forcing here is an abomination. I'm not saying that there are things that still can be learned here. However, I don't believe that it's such torture and trauma and rape is required to learn. I do not agree with that. I do not believe that that is true. Yes, it does happen that beings still learn here, but they're being interfered with initially. So really, what they're being forced to go through, there are things that those same things that are learned, that happened to be learned through severe trauma and rape and harm and all of that. Maybe I'm pretty sure that those same things could be learned in a higher frequency, in higher emotions, and be much less traumatizing. The same lessons could be learned without all the forced trauma and the rape and the harm and the loss. Yeah, that's like I said, once again, I think humanity would be a lot further along had they not been interfering here. And they're forcing all of that in order to feed, right? They're forcing all of the trauma, all the harm, all the rape in order to feed, in order to get those very low negative emotions, in order to feed. Those probably, who's to say that really any of those are even your lessons, right? Those things you probably wouldn't really need to learn. It just happens to be a result of all the forced trauma, harm, and rape. So that's kind of what I'm getting at. And it doesn't help that there are all of these other supposed benevolent groups that we've all heard of that are supposedly helping humanity. I have not seen any manifested physical evidence of benevolent intervention. I hear a lot of lip service, and I hear a lot of blame. I hear a lot of blame being directed at humanity. You just couldn't do it, or you're having such a hard time. You just need to come together. You just need to hold more love and just kumbaya with everybody and this, that, or the other, or you just need to learn this, or you just need to learn these things over here, or you know what? We just need to have the parasitic fucking species removed from this planet, and we'll be just fine. We need to get remove the parasites that are forcibly feeding, torturing, raping humanity. We just need to remove those ones. Yeah. We just need to get those ones removed and we'll be just fine. And then we'll probably be able to evolve shortly after they've been removed. I have no doubt. Especially with with some of the benevolent beings on the planet who have just come into more of their spiritual learning. I'm not in no way trying to make this better than or less than. That's not what I'm referencing there. What I'm saying is some beings have just either been here longer or they're just older. So they just have a bit more under their belt as far as experience, knowledge, and wisdom go. So some of the older ones would be freed up to be sharing what they know or helping and assisting others without parasitic entities trying to forcibly stop them. And I'm sure that we could come into our evolutionary cycle and increase our momentum to such a degree that the whole entire collective can do it in a relatively short amount of time. We just need to get the parasitic infection out of here, removed. We're not lunch. We're not a fucking smorgasbord. We're not an all-you-can-eat buffet. It needs to fucking stop. The rape of humanity, the parasitization of humanity must fucking stop. These entities are out of control. The amount of, the quantity, the amount of beings that they have forcibly tortured, raped, and murdered here, it is sickening. It's sickening is what it is. And this is not the first planet that they've done this on. Humanity as a whole, as a civilization, needs to recognize the bigger problem here. Whether they want to believe that there's another species here or not is irrelevant. There is another species here. They have been raping, torturing, murdering humans for a very long time. So regardless of whether some beings believe in them or not is irrelevant, because it's a fact that they've been here for quite some time. And they are doing this to humans. They just need to be able to fathom it, or they need to wrap their brains around it. They're going to have to take some time, set aside some alone time and work with just the basic facts that there's another species here. They need to do that on their own. What I'm getting at is civilization as a whole, humanity as a whole, needs to start really recognizing en masse what the fucking problem is. So we can take steps to eradicate the parasitic infection. When any individual has an internal parasitic infection, what do? Right? They generally either go get some medication, or they treat it more in a natural way by starving it. You remove the sugar, excessive yeast, and all the bad bacteria that it feeds on in order to starve it and kill it. Right? Like there are steps individuals take in order to end or kill an internal parasitic infection within their bodies. Okay? This is parasitic infection being forced or occurring for a very long time to humanity as a whole. These parasites are using humanity as the host. So we need to deal with the parasitic infection. All you have to do is ask yourself, what do parasites do? And what do parasites, what happens when you don't deal with a parasitic infection internally, right? Okay, so we're at that point where it needs to be recognized that there's an infection. And it needs to be addressed immediately because it has been ignored for too long. And how much better is everybody going to feel once we've removed the parasitic infection? Right? Like, just think, I mean, we will be reacquiring and getting back all of the things that have been raped. And we'll be operating at a much higher level and capacity. And we will be able to do things much more quickly and efficiently. Have more, be embodying more of our true beings, and have access to more of our, I guess, I don't know if you want to say other selves, or more of our soul essence, more of our energy and wisdom and essence that's held in higher parts of our being, right? And once we're healed, or once we're on the road to healing, and we know what the problem is, and we're addressing the problem, the issue, and we can start taking steps to heal it, then once you start with the healing process, things become, the body responds quickly, right? The body generally, for the most part, responds quickly to healing modalities, to healing actions, to healing the energy changes. It's not as imbalanced. It's not as negative, and so healing tends to gain in speed. Okay, so that's another aspect of that. But first, it's getting civilization to recognize that there's actually a parasitic infection. I have been screaming about this for years, and most don't even want to acknowledge in any way, shape, or form that there's another species already here. Okay, well, I'm sorry that doesn't jive with some people's reality or their perception of what is possible and what is not possible. Unfortunately, they're here. Unfortunately, they're doing very horrific, abhorrent things to humanity, and it needs to be addressed. They're parasites. Parasites are dead entities. They cannot sustain their own existence from within. They must go around and rape and parasitize and harm and degrade benevolent life force energy in order to even feed off of it. And they're dead entities. Parasites do not belong in manifested creation, along with living, vibrating beings. That is not how that works. I would say there's 2 or 3 different things that happened in order to have caused that. One is my personal conclusion, personal perception of it. Where was I going with that? That maybe some benevolent beings back in the day just weren't up to the task of, kind of like in this civilization, they didn't want to either rock the boat, or they didn't, maybe they just didn't have the courage to stand up and say anything, or they didn't, maybe there wasn't that many of them, and they just didn't feel strong enough to think that they could address the issue. I'm not sure exactly. I think there were probably a couple of different factors. That contributed to an extended stay of parasites, dead parasitic entities in manifested creation. Either way, this is where we're at, and we can see what they've done with the place, right? I'm not a fan. I'm not a fan of what they've done with the place. I'm sure not. So I'm doing my best, my part. I'm trying to do my part, and in addressing the parasitic infection on this planet and in this universe. And I'm really hoping that others are also recognizing that there's a parasitic infection, and also come to bat, right? Come on down to the front of the line, come down to the battle line, because we're really going to need some help. We need some help. We need some help from a whole bunch of benevolent beings in order to deal with this nastiness. We do. So I'm really hoping there's some other benevolent beings out there who can see what the fuck's going on, have their balls intact, and at least can work from somewhat. I'm not expecting, like, I guess what I'm asking for is, if, number one, for it to be acknowledged that there's a parasitic infection here, and number two, trying to see how many are up to the task in dealing with it, because ignoring it is not going to make it go away. That has not worked up to this point, as we can clearly see. So I'm coming forward and trying to articulate things in hopes that there will be some amount of understanding with other benevolent beings, and they can really see where things are at, and can hopefully lend a hand. You know what I mean? Because it needs to be addressed. It does. Unless we want to see humanity just no longer be humanity, I think we need to take action immediately. Now, because of my what I've been forced to see and what I know of certain things, I do not necessarily have faith that some true benevolent force or being will just swoop in at the last minute and save the day. I just don't, I'm not in a place any longer where I am thinking in that way. It may be that there is. It may be that there's a true benevolent force out there that's going to swoop in at the last minute and just save the day. However, I am basically, what I am doing is I'm still trying to cover my ass. Regardless of whether there's going to be a true benevolent intervention or not, I'm doing what I can right now, because as of right now, I do not see a true benevolent intervention force that is intervening on my behalf, that is intervening on the behalf of humanity. I am not seeing that true benevolent force. Now, maybe you are. Maybe you are. And I am just not. That's great. That's awesome. Please start asking that being some questions. If you are seeing that true benevolent force, please figure out what's going on and when they're gonna, really help us out with this parasitic infection we got going on the planet. But until then, because I'm not seeing it personally, I'm just doing what I can I can't just sit still, and I can't just try and pray it away, and I can't just pretend it doesn't exist, and I can't just say, that's just too big for me. I was never like that. I'm not like that now. And most especially since there are things that have been so horrifically, that have been forced on me, that are absolutely, if I went into those things, I am not trying to, my intent is not to try and gain sympathy from others, or have others. You don't need to hear that. If you were to hear that, if you were to hear those things, and then all of a sudden it creates a mental picture in your mind, you do not need those things in your mind. Just like I don't need those things in my mind. But to tell you those things, what they have forced on me, including via clone, they are, in addition to being traumatizing, but to then have to tell you and have it go through re-traumatizing, and then in addition to that, you have those things in your mind. Like, that is not ethical. That is not right for me to do that. So I refrain from going into specific detail as to what has been forced on me. Please just know that they are things that I would not, that I would absolutely hope that none of you have had forced on you. What I'm trying to do is prevent that from happening to others. So, I have become a very strong being. I do not hang out in denial. I am one who takes action, and I am one who tries to operate out of my full capacity as much as I possibly can, because they are constantly trying to harm me and do other horrific things on a daily basis. So I operate out of my strongest capacity that I can. And yes, I am seeing what they're forcing on me, and I don't want to be seeing that being forced on other benevolent beings. So I am doing what I can to address the issue. Now, this is already over an hour, and again, that was not intended. These topics that I am discussing are very in-depth things, and they do require some amount of detail and explanation. So I do apologize for the length of time. If you are even listening to any of these recordings in full, then I'm sure you have a method or a way of doing so. Maybe you split them up, or maybe you just listen pieces at a time. I'm not sure. But again, I do apologize for the length. So I'm going to try and get this wrapped up. The other part of that I did want to try and mention, number one, if any of you have your psychic faculties active, your gifts are active, and you are, like, I have certain gift skills and abilities, just like you have certain gift skills and abilities, and they may be a little bit different. So there are things that I just know. Now, some of it is based in experience. Some of it are things I just know. And then I don't necessarily always see. Sometimes I see what things look like, sometimes I don't. So what I'm asking is if any of you have your psychic abilities active. To my knowing, the frequency fence seems to be a lattice work or a grid, some kind of a grid system. I don't know if it's more of an energetic grid system, or it's an actual physical machinery type of like satellite grid or satellite lattice work surrounding the planet. It may be both. It may be a combination of both. I don't know. I just know that there's an artificial frequency fence around the planet. So is it, if any of you are able to actually see it, what does it look like? Is it more machinery? Is it more energetic? Is it a combination of both? Oh my gosh. I just had a grasshopper hop right through the window. What are you doing, buddy? Yeah, you're going to have to... I'll have to let him out. He's lost. Just a moment.